everybody. Welcome to Rachel's Reviews. We are really excited today. We are here to talk about not Disney Plus like we've done the last few weeks. We are talking about hidden gems from Netflix. And this is something we have been doing, like I said, for the last couple of weeks, try to give you options for streaming as you're stuck at home. And we'd like to dig a little bit deeper than the obvious choices and the popular stuff. And so I am film critic Rachel Wagner, and my friend Ryan Cam is here.
Rachel, I want you to do me a favor.
All right, let's hear it.
I want you to ask me what is best in life.
What, Ryan, is best in life?
To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and do any podcast with Rachel Wagner. Ha! Shout out to Arnold with the Conan the Barbarian reference.
Oh, there you go.
No, but in all seriousness, thank you so much, Rachel, for having me on as per usual. It's a bit of a change of pace. We're looking at the perpetual ocean known as Netflix, but
right.
I have 5 choices that I think are definitely fallen under the radar in recent times.
Yeah, I mean, I would normally, and I think maybe within a general audience, I think I would suggest Hilda, the animated television show on Netflix, TV series but in the world of my channel, that one's not hidden. I talk about it all the time because I loved it so much and I thought it was so sweet. But no, we're trying to dig a little deeper, talk about things maybe that we don't talk about as much. And so I'm really looking forward to it as well. And are you a big binge watcher?
It depends on what show it is. Like when I first got into the show Breaking Bad, it was literally like a drug that I just couldn't quit. Like I won't binge watch every series. It literally is just dependent on what the show is.
Yeah, no, it's true. I was thinking about that with Rick and Morty is an animated show that I do really respect because it's so creative. It's wildly creative, but it's so cynical that
it's definitely
can't.
Not for everybody.
No, I really can only watch 2 episodes tops before I start to feel kind of a little bit icky, a little bit depressed. I mean, it's just so cynical. And so that's one I could not binge watch that show. And but then other shows, it's just such a, I mean, the first real bingeable show for me was 24.
Love that show. Kiefer Sutherland.
Yeah. And it will leave you on such a cliffhanger that you're like, oh, I gotta find out what happened next in that, in the day.
It's also the novelty of that entire story arc taking place in 24 hours.
Right. And yeah, and then other shows, like I loved Once Upon a Time, but I found that show wasn't great to binge. I don't know, it was just made it feel a little boring. I don't know, it just, like, it was much better on a week basis than kind of binge watched. I didn't think it worked that well for that, but
yeah, it's strange because the shows I'm into now on Netflix, I'm trying to watch all the Star Trek shows, and I'm on the original Star Trek, and that's very serialized. So it's like one story begins and then another ends. And then I'm also watching The Vietnam War by Ken Burns, and that's so well made, but it's so depressing that I don't want to watch like one episode at a time because of like, Jesus, Vietnam.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the country music from Ken Burns last year, and I loved that.
That's what I'm trying to hunt down.
Yeah, you might be able to find it on PBS, just the PBS site. They might still have it to stream. You should check that out. But yeah, his documentaries in general, I think, are pretty good for streaming. I loved McMillions. That's on HBO.
Oh, McMillions was such a fascinating show. Yes, I saw the show and I was just like, how can this get any more bizarre? And then it found a way.
Yes, it was so good. And Agent Doug Matthews is just the best. I
I
loved him
love that
so
guy. I want to
much.
take charisma lessons from that guy.
Me too. He, I just want him to have his own show so bad. I feel like we need a crime investigative whatever show with Agent Matthews because he was so funny. I just loved him. But yeah, so there's lots of good things. I tend to try to avoid binge watching just because if it's what I like, I kind of want it to enjoy it, like it's but sometimes I just can't resist. It's too tempting.
I can only go like 3 or 4 episodes and then be like, okay, I need to like watch something else for like 10 minutes and then
Yeah, or
I'll be fine.
make lunch or something. You get a little crazy.
I
And
think the last season of TV that I binged was Daredevil season 2. And that was like years after it premiered. Like it came out in 2016 and I watched it in like 2019. So
uh-huh. Um what was the last? I mean, I definitely binge watched Hilda because I loved it so much. But I recently did the High School Musical, the musical series. Binge watched it in two settings. I watched it in two settings, but anyway, so yeah, it's an interesting model that that I think has its downsides because they get a lot of energy off of a property, but it stays pretty brief because people watch it in one weekend and then they're done.
yeah, there's something to be said about keeping people in suspense.
Exactly. Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's go ahead. Let's get started. Talk about some hidden gems. I have a couple series. I have a couple movies. The first one that I have is pretty new. It just was released on Netflix in the United States just in February. It's Shaun the Sheep, Farmageddon.
Love this movie.
Yeah, you just got to see it then.
Yes, and
Yeah,
I tend to be a pretty big fan of Aardman. I
yeah,
have a lot of respect for them. I love Wallace and Gromit, love Chicken Run. I'm
yeah,
so glad they're making a sequel
yeah.
finally. And Shaun the Sheep, the last movie that they did was really funny, and Farmageddon was just as funny.
Yeah, I think it really was, and I thought that the little alien was just so cute. I
God,
was
that alien is so
so
adorable.
adorable, and for some reason, I don't know why, I feel like Aardman and Leica, I just feel like stop motion just is not popular right now, and people just don't. No matter how good it's done, people just don't talk about it. People don't see them, even if they're just on Netflix. And this came out, and I feel like it made nothing. Like no one talked about it. Nobody, hardly at all, unless you're in the animation community.
Yeah,
And
it's really sad stuff because stop motion used to be everywhere.
I know. And yeah, even Disney released stop motion for a while and then they haven't for a long time. Since I don't know if I can't even think of one since Frankenweenie that Disney has released. And that was 2012, if I'm not mistaken. And
It's really Leica and Aardman. They're the only game in town.
yeah, and it's so beautiful and it's so creative that it just seems like a real shame that I don't know why these movies just don't seem to catch on. But yeah, I loved this. Really had the spirit of uh, a silent film, a silent comedy. There's no dialogue, and so it's all about these kind of crazy physical comedy type situations that these characters get into, and they're just so cute. And seeing them deal with this alien and just like the whole scene at the beginning where they're like working to order pizza, the sheep, that was so fun. That was one of the highlights of the whole movie.
You know, I've been watching some Charlie Chaplin movies as of late, and I was just thinking to myself, I wonder if Aardman must have been taking notes watching
Mhm.
these.
Yeah, that's what I think. There definitely has some of that feel of like Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin and that kind of thing. So what's your first on your list?
So my first choice is from 2009, and it is Sherlock Holmes, directed by Guy Ritchie.
Mm.
I loved this movie when it first came out. My dad and I saw it in theaters, and I've seen it several times off and on since then. If you just know Robert Downey Jr. for being Iron Man, then he is in this, and he will really surprise you. And I think what I can say the most about Sherlock Holmes is that it's a perfect entry point into Guy Ritchie's films because Guy Ritchie makes Guy Ritchie movies. It's kind of similar to filmmakers like Wes Anderson and Quentin Tarantino. They don't make generic movies. They make movies that they want to make in their own unique style. In the case of Sherlock Holmes, Guy Ritchie makes it very dark and very gritty. London looks like it looks lived in. It feels kind of gross, actually. The color palette is very gray and sometimes dark blue. But I love this movie because it's got a lot of great action. It's got a great style to it. It's got a very interesting mystery. And I think my only problem with it is the villain. He's played by Mark Strong, who I normally like. He just felt a little generic to me, but the heart of the film is Robert Downey Jr. and his chemistry with Dr. Watson, played this time around by Jude Law, who has never really turned in a bad performance, at least that I've seen. So Sherlock Holmes is a definite watch on Netflix, and especially the sequel, A Game of Shadows, which sadly is not on Netflix. But if you haven't seen A Game of Shadows, I do recommend checking that out.
You like both of them, huh?
Oh, I like both of them.
Yeah.
They're both by Guy Ritchie, and it's they're both great.
Yeah, we do have a bit of a differing opinion on this, which is cool. My family is super into Sherlock Holmes, and we debate and debate and debate and debate which is the best version, and who we love Sherlock Holmes in my family.
And I take it you weren't a fan.
I'm not gonna say I hated it, but I didn't really like the way that they turned Sherlock Holmes into an action star. That's not
Okay,
that's
that's
not
fair.
Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes uses his brain. His brain is his superpower, and so all the like Guy Ritchie gimmicks of like the slow motion bullets and chases and explosions and stuff like that. Like to me, I didn't really like that. I'm not going to say that. I mean, I think Robert Downey Jr. is good, and he does a good job. And I agree with you. I think it looks nice, but it was a little too like Victorian James Bond as opposed to Sherlock Holmes to me. And but I can see why you enjoy it, and I can see why you would recommend it. I just that's the part that I didn't. I guess I'm not that huge a Guy Ritchie fan, and a lot of his gimmicks just are not for me. Um, but but yeah, I'm sure a lot of people will watch it and enjoy it. But yeah, especially the sequel, I thought wasn't as good as the
Thoughts on the BBC Sherlock Holmes with Benedict Cumberbatch?
So I loved it for the first 2 seasons.
Me too.
Loved it. And then the third season wasn't as good, but I was still enough invested. And then
I actually haven't seen the third season, so don't say
oh,
anything.
okay, I won't say anything. Fourth season wasn't my favorite. I'll just say
Oh,
that and leave it alone.
that's when they jumped the shark, I take it.
Oh yeah, they did.
Well, I'm looking forward to raging when I see that.
The title of my review was was why Sherlock series 4 sucked. That was my title.
Oh wow.
I was so mad. The creator Stephen Moffat, he's not my favorite. He's such a gimmicky guy, and he cares so much about tricking and surprising the viewer that he forgets to tell a good story. It's kind of like Shyamalan in that way, but with television, and and like he did it with Doctor Who, and then he did it with with Sherlock especially, but I loved it for the first 2 seasons so much, and so but
If this
yeah.
makes you feel any better, my personal favorite Sherlock Holmes is Basil Rathbone.
Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah. I hadn't seen one of his until it was around, what was it, like 2015 to 6, something like that. Then I finally watched it, and I was like, this is charming. He's very good. And we loved in the 90s, there was a version with Jeremy Brett on PBS for BBC that was really good, especially the beginning of he's like, if you want a traditional Sherlock Holmes, he's like perfect. But yeah, and I even have a fondness for Great Mouse Detective.
Old
The
Basil
new
of
one.
Baker Street versus Ratigan.
Yeah. I think it's fun. I think it's a little underrated of Disney films, if I was gonna
I
pick some.
remember watching it like 10 or so years ago, and I just never went back to it. But now I'm thinking about it. I think I may have to watch it again.
It really is pretty fun. So, but anyway, interesting choice, good choice. So my second choice is a series, and it's called The Movies That Made Us. And this is a little series that is that goes back into the history of different sort of iconic movies and why we love them, but also like how they got made. It interviews producers and writers and all different kinds of people, and the actors, of course, talks about their auditions and why certain movies just really took hold and became such phenomenons. And as a movie fan, of course, I love that. And it's got, there are only I think 4 episodes so far. There's Dirty Dancing, which I love that movie. Home Alone, which I love also.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. And then Ghostbusters, which is fine. I like it fine. And then Die Hard. So those are the ones they have so far, and it's really fun, really entertaining, and for each episode 45 minutes. And so if you like movies, I definitely recommend checking that show out.
This show is the spinoff to The Toys That Made Us. Am I wrong?
Oh, I don't know. That sounds right, but I don't know.
Because I have both of these shows waiting on my list, and I was like, The Toys That Made Us and The Movies That Made Us. They all sound like they're coming from the same people.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
But
sense.
I'll definitely have to check this out because I don't know about Dirty Dancing because I've never seen it, but Die Hard is amazing, and ditto Ghostbusters, and
Yeah.
I don't think there's a single person on the planet that doesn't like Home Alone. So I think I'm going to have to take you up on this one.
Yeah, and honestly, Dirty Dancing, it's a lot deeper than you'd think from maybe the description of it. Like, it deals with some really tough stuff. It's really coming of age film, and there's even a character that has an abortion, and I mean some stuff, some tough stuff that you wouldn't necessarily expect for what seems like a silly dance movie. So I definitely encourage you to give it a shot. But yeah, the it's, I mean, they picked 4 definitely iconic movies to start out with, for sure.
Yeah, I have definitively seen the ending dance scene where
Yeah.
Patrick Swayze and the girl, I can't remember her name, they dance to "I've Had the Time of My
Yeah.
Life," and when
Nobody puts
he
baby in a
picks her up
corner.
at the end, it's like, oh, that gives me goosebumps every time.
Yeah. Nobody puts baby in a corner. It's so they call her baby. I don't know why they call her baby, but
I thought that was her name.
it is, well, I don't know. I think it's a nickname, but that's what they call her throughout the whole movie. Is her name is Baby. So yeah. But anyway. So guess. So what do you have at number 2?
So my number 2 is from 2011, and it is a sequel. It's Kung Fu Panda 2. I was debating which family movie I should put in this one, but I started thinking about Kung Fu Panda 2, and it was like, you know what? I'm putting it in there. Kung Fu Panda 2 is obviously the sequel to Kung Fu Panda, and other than How to Train Your Dragon, I believe that Kung Fu Panda is the best thing that DreamWorks has produced. That's not a standalone movie like The Prince of Egypt. It could have so easily been turned into like the gimmick of, oh, it's Jack Black as a panda, wah wah. But no, they didn't do that. They actually gave it a story with surprising amounts of nuance from a movie called Kung Fu Panda. They actually put 1,000 times more effort than it had any right to be. But I love Kung Fu Panda 2. It's my favorite of the trilogy. It has the most story. It explores Poe's origins in about as good a way as you can get it. And it has my favorite villain of the trilogy in the form of, I believe his name is Kai. He's the peacock, and he's voiced by Gary Oldman. Uh,
Yeah.
Bravo to the writers and directors for making a peacock threatening, but they found a way.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the Furious Five, which they're all awesome, and Dustin Hoffman voices Shifu, and he's great. And there's a great scene near the third act where Poe finally gets in touch with the spiritual world, and he finally gains the fluidity necessary to defeat the villain. It's such a great scene.
Mm-hmm.
Kung Fu Panda 2 is just excellent.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely excellent. The for lack of a better, the fight choreography, the way that they use the metal blades, which is a style of choreography from I think it's Wuhan area of China, and so they use the blades. If you watch the movie Shadow, which came out last year, which was really good, they use the blades as well, and that's live action. And so it was really cool, and the animation is beautiful, and I agree the villain is really good. I mean, my only nitpick with the Kung Fu Panda movies is that I kind of wish they'd gotten more Chinese actors for the voices instead of such American sounding actors, but it's a nitpick. Overall, I really enjoy it. I think it's really sweet, and anybody could relate to Poe and his wanting to his insecurities and in becoming having a hard time becoming a leader, and I think that works really well in the movie, and it feels like a natural evolution of his character.
Absolutely, and I love how I love in the movie how the Furious Five, they think they destroy the cannon when it turns out it was just a big model.
Right. Yeah. So good choice. Very good. So my next choice is a movie, and it's a rom-com. Most of the rom-coms on Netflix are pretty terrible, but there was one last year called Always Be My Maybe. And I really loved it. I thought it was so funny and so well done. And it stars Ali Long, Ali
Ali
Wong,
Wong.
Ali Wong as this celebrity chef named Sasha Tran. And she was high school sweethearts, really good friends with this guy named Marcus, who is played by Randall Park, and they end up meeting up again years later, and that so that spark is still there, and there's a hilarious cameo from Keanu Reeves. I just thought almost every set piece was funny. I thought they had great chemistry. I loved the ending. When it's such a classic rom-com ending, but I loved it when he says that he stops her in the red carpet and says, I want to hold your purse for you. I want to be there for you. I don't even care what I have to do. And it was just one of those classic rom-com speeches, which I love. And so I just thoroughly enjoyed it very much. And so I think that if you haven't seen it, people should see it because it's romantic, but it's also genuinely funny.
I was on the fence about this movie originally because rom-coms normally are not my thing. Not that I have anything personally against them. It's just not my cup of tea. But now that I'm hearing you talk about it, it's like, okay, now I should probably see this because all that I ever saw of it was the Keanu Reeves part because I'm a massive fan of Keanu Reeves. Like
Yeah.
he is just an awesome guy. Not only that, but he's a great actor and a great stuntman. See any of the John Wick films for that,
Yeah.
for proof of that. But I think I'm definitely going to see this because of Ali Wong. I'm actually a big fan of hers. She did an entire comedy special when she was like 6 or 7 months pregnant. And
Mm-hmm.
as someone who has been in theater for a long time, like that must not have been easy. I mean, for a number of reasons, but the one that I can think of is, the hot lights and you're on stage with strangers and like the
Yeah, for
room is
sure.
hot, and so I've always admired her for that. I also think she's really, really funny too. So
Well,
I'll
I know
definitely have to
her.
check out the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah, I think it's genuinely funny. I think there's enough in there for people that aren't like super into rom-coms to still like if you're open to them at all. Like I think there's enough here to be enjoyable. And but it actually made my top 10 of 2019 as far as just my favorites of things that I liked. But I first knew Allie from American Housewife, which I think is a show that's super underrated. I love it. I think it's so funny, and it's just the show about this kind of a blue collar, I guess, family that lives in this uppity suburb in Connecticut, and their their struggles to kind of raise their kids in this snobby town, and she plays oh my gosh, my brain, what's her name? Anyway, she plays the BFF of the main girl on the show, and she's hilarious, so funny, and so that's how I first got to know her, and uh, I uh, I really liked her in this too, and it's nice to have that diversity too. That they're different looking couple for rom coms. Nice. Uh, you like to have every genre should deserve to have some diversity, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
Hmm. So that was my number 3. What's your next choice?
So my number 3 is a documentary from the beautiful folks over at PBS. It's Woodstock: 3 Days That Defined a Generation.
Oh.
Uh, this is a movie, or this is a movie about the Woodstock concert that took place over 3 days in 1969. It's one of the most famous and infamous concerts ever that was ever done.
Hmm.
Everyone who was everyone in the rock and roll world in the late 60s and early 70s took part. Everyone from Jimi Hendrix to The Who to Janis Joplin, like you name it, they were probably there. I believe Creedence Clearwater Revival was there as well. But the documentary also does a great job of showing like what happened at Woodstock itself, and went in depth on the hippies and the drugs and the dysentery and the sex
Hmm.
and as much as they can show for it being PBS. But I've grown up listening to rock and roll. I listened to a lot of the artists that they spotlighted in that documentary, so seeing them perform in there was really something special. And I love learning about how stuff is made and how famous events were put on. So, two for the price of one.
Yeah.
If you're in any way interested in like concerts and how concerts were put on and music and etc., then this is definitely something for you. This will be your jam, if you will.
Yeah. No, I love that kind of stuff. I love the I don't know, behind the scenes, diving into sort of cultural. I really like documentaries in general. So that sounds really good for sure.
Fun fact, before we move on, there were so many people at Woodstock that all of the talent had to be airlifted via helicopter into the venue.
Oh yeah, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that must have been a challenge. I would not have liked to have been the pilot.
No, that's true. So very good. All right. Well, my fourth choice is a really fun series that kind of came and went too soon. It's called Gallivant.
Oh,
And
I know this from the ad where they sang the whole thing. The
yes,
Gallivant.
yes, I love musicals. And this was kind of, I think, a bit of a spin-off. It's not officially a spin-off, but kind of an attempt to replicate the success of Once Upon a Time, but add the music and the other things. And it's about this like knight, and he's off to avenge his his uh his good name, and he's trying to find he's this man, this King Richard, who stole his bride. And I don't know, it's just very classic, like swashbuckling kind of story, and very kind of over the top and silly and fun. And all the music is from Alan Menken, who's brilliant, who did
So
Tangled
many
and
Disney movies that
Beauty
we
and the
can't even track
Beast.
them all.
Yeah, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Little Mermaid, so many. And I think Glenn Slattery is the lyricist, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, he was saying at D23, Alan Menken, that he wrote over 90 songs just for this show. Can you imagine? I mean, I
Oh,
think some of them were very short. Some of them were like a minute, 2 minutes, but still 90 songs. That's amazing to me.
speaks to Alan Menken's ability to pump out 90 songs.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was amazing. And so it's really fun. If you just want escapism, something silly with some fun songs, you should check out Gallivant.
Yeah, I remember seeing those ads all the time on ABC, and I was like, "What the heck is this show? It looks like the weirdest thing, but yet somehow looks good at the same time."
Yeah, yeah. So what do you have next?
So my next choice is a movie from, I want to say, either 2006 or 7. It's called Julie and Julia. It's about
Mm-hmm.
it's based on a true story. Well, two true stories actually. It In the 1940s, Julia Child, who would become known as the host of the show The Joy of Cooking, how she moved to Paris with her husband, and she learned all about the French cooking scene, and how everything led up to her publishing the famous cookbook, Mastering the Art of French Cooking. And in the other arc, in 2002, it follows a woman named Julie Powell, played by Amy Adams. And she is on a personal quest to cook all 524 recipes in that Mastering the Art of French Cooking book. Julia Child is played by Meryl Streep, and she's really good. Her husband is played by Stanley Tucci, who is always great. Amy Adams, as usual, is great in anything that she is in. And what I love the most about this movie is the food, because the food in this movie looks unbelievable. Like, I would, there's a
Yeah.
montage where both women are just going to town, like just cooking and cooking and cooking, and their husbands just one scene are like they're taking Pepto Bismol, and they're just like, oh god. And I would have been like, I would love to be you right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, I have a ton to say about this movie. This is the last film directed by Nora Ephron, who is one of my favorite writers, but then also she became a director. And I love her writing, and especially the way she does sort of witty banter. And I like I like the way that her scripts always include little sort of essays about life and sometimes like in You've Got Mail, they're just like little silly things, like when she talks about the empowerment of ordering coffee at Starbucks, and she has a little sort of monologue that she goes on. I love how she does that. And in this movie, this was the last movie that she made before she died, and she took 2 books, because the original book called Julie and Julia is just the Julie Powell part. And I have to be honest, I absolutely hated that book. I thought it was awful. Julie is such an insufferable, entitled, miserable character. Like she doesn't really seem to gain anything that's positive out of this experience except for just complaining a lot. And so I really, really disliked the book. But what Nora Ephron did that was so brilliant is she brought in this other book called My Life in France by Julia Child, which is one of my favorite books. I absolutely love that book. And so so that helped a lot. And then her casting was so brilliant in the film, because I think that even though there are times in the movie where I even struggle with Julie Powell in the movie. She's just a lot. But because of Amy Adams, and she's such a warm presence in the film, it helps you like her character way more than the actual.
You describing her as being insufferable, I'm like, in this movie? No, that doesn't seem possible.
Like she's just so, like in the movie, she has all these like breakdowns and all this stuff. And in the hands of Amy Adams, that's kind of charming. But in the hands of Julie Powell, it's frustrating.
It's like first world problems.
Yeah, kind of. And she's also super foul-mouthed and super just and it's not that can't be okay in a book, but when you're kind of reading something for sort of light escapism, it's kind of off-putting, to have this really cynical, really foul-mouthed, really I don't know. And it just wasn't for, I really disliked the book, and it was just kind of joyless. Whereas I felt like what they were able to do by combining Julia's story and casting Amy Adams and the changes that Nora Ephron made, it made the movie, it made the Julie Powell part way better. And so I give them a lot of credit there. And it's definitely an example of a movie that's, in my opinion at least, way better than the book. I love the Julia Child parts so much. I think Meryl Streep totally deserved her Oscar nomination for that role, and I wish that Stanley Tucci had been nominated, because I think they had such chemistry and were so sweet together. And I really I love their romance, because I think it's really cool that he basically gave up his creative ambitions to help her achieve her dreams. And which is, I mean, I think that's what you want in a marriage partner, somebody who values you even more than them, and is willing to sacrifice for you. And I just love their marriage, and I love their relationship. And
I love the scene when Julia Child returns home from her first day of at the Le Cordon Bleu, and she's just cutting like the biggest mountain of onions you've ever seen. And Stanley Tucci walks into the room, and he's like, "Oh God!" and he just like covers up his eyes, and he's like, "Jewel, aren't you taking this a little too far?" And she's like, "You should have seen the way those men looked at me." I felt so sorry for her. And he just walked away. It's like, definitely not the time. And she's like, "Are you hungry?" And he's like, "No." And she's like, "Well, good." And she goes back to chopping.
Yeah. When I loved when they have their Valentine's party, and he just like touches his heart and looks at her, and oh, it's just so sweet. And I think they have one of, if I were going to get married, they're definitely one of my couple's relationship goals, I guess. I think they have such a great marriage. And
the way they say
yeah.
bon appetit to each other at the beginning is like, that's relationship goals.
Yeah. And I just really feel like their happiness and his value of her and her happiness was more important than anything else. And you can't want for anything better in a marriage partnership. And so that's a very good choice. I love so much about that movie, and you're right about the food. It looks so delicious throughout the whole movie.
I thought I'd never want artichoke hearts with hollandaise sauce, but this movie made me want that.
Yeah. Even the very first thing that Julie Powell cooks it's like a chocolate tart or something like that. It looks so yummy.
Yeah, and Chris Messina, who plays Julie Powell's husband, and he's grabbing and licking the spoon, and I'm like, I would so love to be you right now.
That's funny. Well, very good. All right. So my last choice is another romantic comedy. Well, not romantic comedy, romantic movie. Because those are my favorite. It's got a crazy name. It's called the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society.
Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah. And this is based on a book, which I loved. It was a pretty popular book club book a couple of years ago. And it's about this book club that on this island of Guernsey, which is an island in Great Britain, and they were actually occupied by the Nazis. It's one of the only places in Great Britain that was actually occupied by them. And so they start this book club. There's a bunch of different farmers to kind of to gather together against the Nazis. And Lily James plays this reporter kind of a couple years later who starts to look into the situation and starts to write letters to the whole book club. And you start to get to know the whole book club, plus you get to know her. And then also there's a farmer there that is played by Mikhail Heisman. Anyway, and they end up, he's kind of he's a single dad, and he's super charming, and they end up falling in love, and it's really good. And it does branch off of the book a little bit, but I still really enjoyed it. I thought it was really swoon worthy. It has excuse me. It what's her name from just one sec. What's her name? It has Jessica Brown Finley from Downton Abbey, and it has it has Penelope Wilton from Downton Abbey, who's excellent in the film. And it's just like a warm hug of a movie. It's really sweet, and it has some tender parts, some emotional parts, because it's about the war and everything, and but then also has romantic parts and has funny parts, and I just really loved it. It's directed by Mike Newell, who is really great at
directed Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire.
That's right, and Four Weddings. He's really great at rom-coms. He did Four Weddings and a Funeral, and so he's really good at that kind of dynamic. And I just thought he knocked it out of the park. I really, really, really enjoyed this film. And so if you like romantic movies, check it out.
I'll be the first to say that I had never heard of this movie until you sent me your list when we were preparing for this podcast. But now that you're talking about it, I'm like, well, I tend to watch anything Lily James is up with, so I think I'll definitely have to take you up on it.
And Matthew Good plays her sort of gay friend afterward, and he's really great. And so I really enjoyed it a lot. And so you have to let me know what you think. Glenn Powell plays the other guy that she's engaged to. at the start of the movie, like most romantic movies. I wish I had been able to see it on the big screen, like over in England, but it just came to Netflix here. So, and the book is such a fun, if you just want a really a light escapist read that's really sweet, and it's a really good one. But there we go. So that's my last choice. And do you have one more, or you lost track?
Yep,
Yeah. So what's your
one more choice. It's a fairly recent series that come on. It's called Tiger King. You may have heard of it.
yes.
No, I'm kidding. I'm totally
like,
kidding. I had to. I had to
I'm like,
include a
that's not a
Tiger
hidden
King.
gem.
I had to include a Tiger King joke in there somewhere. But no. In all seriousness, my last choice is About Time from 2013.
Oh.
This movie stars Domhnall Gleeson and Rachel McAdams, and as well as Bill Nye and Margot Robbie before she became Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn and Wolf of Wall Street, and just in a lot of movies right now. This was one of her first big outings, but About Time is one of my favorite romance movies. It's about a guy played by Domhnall Gleeson who learns that on his birthday he gains the power to travel back and forth in time in his own life, and he uses that to try and work up the confidence to ask a girl he likes out on a date. Uh, by having all the time in the world, he understands that by having all the time in the world, you need to know how to be responsible with it, and you have to appreciate it, because despite the fact that you can go back and forth, you can only do that one thing once. And so it's a really nice story with an ending that just makes me tear up every single time. It involves Domhnall Gleeson and Bill Nye, and they share a very tender moment. I won't talk about it too much. I just do highly recommend that everyone do watch it. It's a fairly recent movie. I think it's 2013 or 2012,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a really, really awesome movie that fell under the radar for sure.
I have heard from so many people to watch this movie, but I still have never watched it. So I need to get with it. Really up my alley of something that I would really like, and because it's pretty romantic, right?
I would say so, yes. I mean, I'm not a humongous romance movie fan, like I said earlier, but it feels very romantic to me. I mean, minus
Yeah.
the time travel stuff, it feels like something that maybe a Nora Ephron would make, or
Mm-hmm.
the woman that made The Intern would make.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people group them together. Nancy Myers and Nora
Or
Ephron.
Nancy Myers, that's who I
Yeah.
meant.
And so I would definitely have to watch that. I didn't even realize it was on Netflix.
I did too. I was because full disclosure, I was bouncing back and forth between including this movie or Drive, directed by Nicholas Winding Refn, and I was like,
Mm.
"It is About Time even on there?" And sure enough, it was on there. So I'm like, you know what? I'll put on Drive. I'll put Drive on there next week.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great choice. I definitely want to watch that. And I don't know if you'd consider would you consider Perks of Being a Wallflower a hidden gem, or is that pretty popular?
it's it's well liked among my group of friends,
Yeah.
but a lot of my friends, at least in this space, are movie nerds. So
It's
or
one of my
cinephiles as they
yeah.
call us.
It's a
But
movie that I love, and it's just been added, like I think just a couple weeks ago.
I've
So
actually never seen it, so I'll definitely have to
yeah,
look into that.
I love it. But there we go. We got our 5 picks. So why don't we go over our picks real quick? So I have Shaun the Sheep, Farmageddon, and then The Movies That Made Us, and then Always Be My Maybe, and then Gallivant, and then finally the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society.
And my choices are the Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes, Kung Fu Panda 2, Woodstock, 3 Days That Defined a Generation, Julie and Julia, and About Time.
Great. And so thanks so much for talking about these. Let us know if you're listening what some of your favorite hidden gems are for watching on Netflix. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And Ryan, where can people find you?
On all forms of social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can find me at RyanCam20. At Letterboxd is there as well. And over on my YouTube channel, just search Ryan Cam Movie Reviews. It'll take you straight there. My latest installment of my series, The AFI Project, just dropped shortly before we started recording this. So it's live now. It's where I talk about The Godfather, the greatest mafia movie ever made.
Yeah.
On Wednesday, I'll be dropping another one about Casablanca. And then on Friday, I'll be dropping the next one, which is about hang on, let me look into my calendar and look. It's about Raging Bull. I had a brain fart there. Sorry about that. I also have my I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I've listened to both of your episodes so far and really enjoyed both of them. I thought you did a very good job. So people should definitely check it out.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I've also got my series called I Finally Saw, where I take a look at famous movies I'm watching for the first time. That's going to be dropping a couple new episodes next week. So just a lot of stuff is going on my end, and now is as best a time as ever to subscribe. So do yourself a favor and go ahead and do that.
Great. Yes, all that information will be in the description section. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So make sure to check that out. And also you can find me at the Hallmarkies podcast all over the place. And we are still keeping very, very busy on both streams. So I would love for you to check all of that out. So thanks again, Ryan. This is really fun. And we will talk again next week.